District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Zootopia 2 has come home to Disney+.
Let's go!
Get ready for a new case.
We're the greatest partners of all time!
New friends.
Gary the Snake.
And your last name?
The Snake.
Dream Team. Get new habitats.
Zootopia has a secret reptile population.
You can watch the record-breaking phenomenon at home. Zootopia 2, now available on Disney+, rated PG. And right now you can get Disney+ and Hulu for just $4.99 a month for 3 months with a special limited time offer. Ends March 24th. After 3 months, plan auto-renews at $12.99 a month. Terms apply.
Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. All right, listeners, we are with Aurelia Giacometto. She's worn many hats in energy and conservation. Most famously, you'll remember her as Fish and Wildlife Director under the first Trump administration. She's worn many hats in the private sector, public sector before joining the Earth and Water Law firm, where she's a partner. She was at Louisiana DEQ. And I've had the pleasure of becoming acquainted with her over the years, and I'm so grateful now we could finally sit down with her for a podcast. Aurelia, thank you for having me in your office here in D.C.
Absolutely. I think we've been trying to get this on the books for a little while now, so
yes,
it's nice that we can actually sit down and talk.
You have had experience and exposure to the outdoors since you were little. I would love you to start with talking about your background and how you got roped into all this.
Yeah, so there's a classic picture. It's me and my uncle, and I'm holding a fish, and I just remember I was so excited, and I was like, Uncle Joe, I caught the biggest fish. And then he looked at me, and he's like, you're the only one who caught a fish. So, I mean, it wasn't like going back, it was a massive fish. It was just the experience of being with my uncle, who I loved immensely, being there with my family. And then my grandpa being in the South, you know, he was a huge hunter. He bred hound dogs. And so I've just always had this affiliation or just draw to the outdoors.
And you were in Mississippi.
So my family's from Mississippi. So my mother and father, high school sweethearts from Mississippi. And my mom is the oldest of 9 kids.
Wow.
So after she graduated from college, the day after, she got on a bus and headed north to Indianapolis. My dad was overseas. He fought in the Vietnam War, so he came back to Mississippi. And he's like, where's Lily Bell? And they said, oh, son, she went up north. So he got in his car and he went up north. And so that's how my sister and I, and our families from the north, and everyone else stayed south. So they're either in Mississippi or Texas.
That's such a big spread, too, because those are, I mean, Texas and Mississippi have some similarities. They're very different, of course, but Indiana is such a stretch from Mississippi. How was that adjustment and the outdoor opportunities?
So I'd say it's less. So we would have, like, during the summers, during the vacations, no one ever comes up north. Like, no, they're like, it's cold. So we would spend the holidays in the summers down in Mississippi with the cousins, with the aunts, with the uncles, and that's when you be outdoors. My grandfather also had a pig farm, and I would be the only one out of all the grandkids that would go out with him on the pig farm. And so you'd have all the slop, and you go out there, you wake up early, you go feed them, and I just enjoyed being out there with them. And that's when you got to have a little bit more space than what you would find in the city life.
It really is. And did your early experiences influence you to go into a career in this? Was this always something you set out to do professionally, or it just kind of fell into your lap?
I think I discovered it by what I enjoyed doing. So I first started, my first career was that I was a researcher. And so when I was in undergrad at Howard University, I was a research assistant and just really enjoyed the research aspects of things. You're in the lab, you're looking at things in the microscope, you have your experiments that you're doing, and you're like, wow, this works, or something doesn't work, and you're like, okay, you're trying to figure out what possibly went wrong. What was in your hypothesis? What other factors do you need to change? Not everything all at once, but you're figuring out what's the solution to the problem. So I was originally thinking about vet school because I enjoyed animals, I enjoyed being outdoors, but I really enjoyed the research aspects of things. And so that's how I ended up going to Purdue University, and I was in their animal science division, but it was all focused on molecular genetics. And so it's the research aspects, and then what the technologies that I learned from there, that's when I took those and went over to Monsanto. And I figured that when I was an undergrad, that plants and botany, they don't move, they don't do anything. This is awful. And then you get out of school and you're like, oh, well, I guess I need a job. And so it translated very well from animal science and the research in order to go into plant research. And then, you're working for the largest agrochemical company that there is. And the slogan is, how do you do more with less, but you're feeding the world? It doesn't get any better than that. And then you're doing the leading research, and I was in the research field for about 6, close to 7 years, and then I moved over to the corporate affairs side, and that's when the veil came off. And I realized people actually don't like Monsanto. So it was absolutely surprising for me, because I went from this ecosystem where we're all researchers, we're all working very hard. I was on the regulatory side of things. So you're further in, you're about 3 to 4 years from commercialization of a product. And so you're working with are other scientists, or you're working with your regulatory affairs person so that you can get the product approved in the different countries. And so moving over to corporate affairs, it's a product that's already on the market. You're trying to either engage with other communities that might need it. One of the things of our portfolio was I was working with African countries, and we were donating seed in some aspects. And then we were also working on a project where we were donating the traits of drought and insect resistance we were working with 5 different African countries. We were also working with the public entity, and ended up running into a lot of the issues when it came to laws and regulations, because whoever you're selling your product to, you're going to have to abide by their laws. And so a lot of the African countries, their markets are Europe. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the European countries don't allow for GMOs.
Right.
And so then you start to unravel the cord, and then the African countries are aligned with conventions that don't allow GMOs. So either you would pay a fine or you could go to jail. So we spent a lot of time on the legal side, on the intellectual property side. And it was fascinating for me, because the first project I had worked on when I came to Monsanto was drought-resistant corn. And that was the same trait that we were trying to introduce into Africa. So it came really full circle, and a lot of the traits that happen that you introduce, it takes about 20 years before it gets to a third world country. And so really fast-tracked it, and we're 7 years later. So that was what spurred me to go to law school. And then that sent me on this other trajectory from going from the agriculture to, it's still in the environmental space, but it's focused more on wildlife. And now I'm more focused on energy. So it still all ties to environmental, but it's just like different hats that I've worn, but that's really how everything started.
I feel like you have to wear many hats because I work mostly on the energy side of things. I work in wildlife conservation still too, but most of my occupation or focus is on the energy question because everything emanates from it, like downstream and transportation, and then of course interaction with wildlife and land and water, all this discussion about AI data centers, which I'm not sure if you're focused much on, but that's something like I've been focusing on more lately, and what's the response and all that. So all of it has a tie-in and intersection together, and you should be well-versed. And I think you can learn as you go, too. But I want to ask you, how did you leapfrog from the private sector then to the Trump administration first time? Because you were deputy director at DOI before you became Fish and Wildlife Director. So talk about that. Walk us through that.
So I was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So in a way, it was like I took a demotion, but then got a promotion. So when you're the Deputy Assistant Secretary, you kind of have a dotted line to the agencies because the directors or the heads of the individual divisions report up to that Assistant Secretary. But then when I became the Director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, then it's like, okay, you're signing your name, like you are the responsible one. So I'm not like politics kind of just happened. And I see myself more as an administrator than on the politics side.
Right.
And if I see someone whose policies and their principles align with where I'm at, then that's the person I go for. And so me and my husband, I knew him a long time before we started dating. I told him no for 8 years.
You did?
I did. I told him no for 8 years, and then one day I said yes, but that's a whole nother story.
Oh.
So we've been together for about 4 years now, and he's been working on me like, oh, Aurelia, because we have politically we're aligned differently. Like he's a Republican and I have voted as a Democrat. And so he's like, you believe in education, you believe in hard work, you don't like taxes. And he just goes through this whole list. And he's like, what you believe and your principles don't align with how you're voting and what you're saying. And I was like, oh, so I mean, like this, it took a process because there's so many people that have these thoughts and perceptions of when you have a title. And so many people look at the titles versus what are the actual principles underneath. And if people actually voted their principles and spoke with their principles, it would be a completely different political landscape. And so I made that decision. And so when we were watching the political debates and seeing everything happening in the 2016 cycle, I have no idea. I have no history when it came to the Republican Party. So I was like, oh my God, Trump is amazing. And you see what he did. You see what he's accomplished. And it's not you see the usual politicians, they say something, they get in office, and you're like, but that's not what you said. And Trump already had a track record before he came in. And it's like, how do you not deny that? And then what he's saying is like, I'm going to change it. Why not? Like, what do you have to lose? And I was like, man, that guy is going to win. And Leo was like, oh, you know nothing about politics. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. And so I was like, here's the deal. He's going to win, and I want to go work for him. And so that is how
you were that confident.
That is how it happened.
Wow.
And so that night, he stayed up late, and I was like, well, you already know how this is going to work out, so I'm going to go to bed. Woke up in the middle of the night. He's still, like, at the kitchen table, like, falling asleep. And I was like, so I guess we better get to work. And so that's how I got into the administration, because I had no political background, never worked on the Hill. I was just a person that worked in the private sector at a large, Fortune 100 company. So I appreciate the ability to be able to serve, and just came about it probably in a different way than maybe most people that I came across. But it was fascinating and just I enjoyed my time there. I had some great bosses, met some wonderful people between the businesses, the people on the Hill, going out into the communities, people still at the Fish and Wildlife Service that I keep in contact with. It was just a wonderful experience.
What were you most proud of? Because when we first became acquainted and friends, I remember telling you that I hated the treatment you received. Like, you had your confirmation delayed. They were making your job more difficult for you to execute the mission of the Fish and Wildlife Service to respond to fishers, hunters, conservationists, and all of you. I think, in my opinion, the first Trump administration was doing an excellent job of building rapport, building trust with a lot of hunters and anglers and conservation who's felt sidelined. And I think Trump 2.0 is doing great at that too, and maybe taking more than taking with what you guys started and then expanding on it too. And I'll ask you how you feel that they're doing. But I felt like the interior got so much scrutiny, and they weren't even doing anything remotely necessarily controversial, in my opinion, for anyone who's who follows these set of issues very closely. And then the Biden administration came in, dismantled that, death by 1,000 cuts, put climate above like hunting and fishing as conservation, little measures here and there, undid the work that you and your colleagues were doing, and it was night and day. And when people saw that Trump 2.0 came in, they're like, oh goodness, like the stuff that Aurelia and the others were doing is now back, and maybe they'll expand upon that. But was there something in particular that you were most proud of in your tenure?
I'd definitely opening up more land for hunting and fishing, particularly when being able to go out into the field when we had certain projects that we were able to say, hey, these lands are open. I do have, there's actually a couple, but I'll just mention one that was extremely memorable for me. And it was out in Kansas. And we had a refuge there. I won't name the refuge. And the Fish and Wildlife Service had senior water rights. And so that area where the refuge was, there's about 1,800 families, farming community families. And for the past few years, the Fish and Wildlife Service have been talking about they weren't getting their full allocation of their senior water rights. And there was letters that came into the department. And so went out there, had kind of a town hall. Let's just say they didn't receive the Fish and Wildlife Service very well because they were angry. This is their livelihoods. They've been there for, several generations. This is something that did come up in my discussions with the senator about this refuge. And I said, I will make a commitment, because the Fish and Wildlife Service had sent a letter saying in a week that if they did not get their full water allocation, that they were going to take it. That meant that 1,800 families would probably not have water.
Wow.
And so if you think about families, then you add, there's probably 4 people in every family. And I'm like, you cannot just not have families with water. So the question was, well, how much water do you actually need to run the refuge? I've never gotten an answer to that question. So I made a commitment to the senator, and I said, we'll do this. We will not ever cut off water like that. We will give you, ample time, at least 6 months, so that we can work on a backup plan if it doesn't work. Had weekly calls, ended up working really closely with USDA, and figured out ways to get another water supply. That was about a $750,000 investment from the USDA that we got.
Incredible.
Worked through a plan and never had to cut off their water. Was able to get them additional water, and then the refuge was fine. So sometimes then went back out there, toured the refuge with the senator, with a couple of the state officials. We had a town hall first, and had people coming up in tears because they're like, you have saved our family. Like, we can actually start planning for the next year. And agriculture communities are hard, like very hard, because you're really just relying on what the seasons are going to bring. And so to be able to have that assurance, like you're not just going to cut the legs from underneath them, and roles in these agencies, there's so much power. And you have the choice to either say, okay, I'm just going to go by what it states here, like this is what we get, so we're going to take it, versus what do you actually need? We're part of a community, we're part of an ecosystem. How do we fix this so that we can all win here together? Because we want the community to come out to the refuge, and we are also part of the community. So how do we make this so that it's not adversarial? And so that's kind of the approach that I always try to take. I mean, you have the science, and then there's the rule of law, and then there's the little bit that people forget, and that's the common sense.
I'd never heard that story, and maybe it wasn't covered in the news. So I appreciate you sharing that with me and the listeners, because there were so many positive developments. I think on the EPA side with Superfund site cleanup, I was reading it in Politico in 2020. I was shocked that they gave such a fair account to the Superfund cleanup. So I feel like this deserved similar coverage, but I'm glad we could talk about it after the fact, because that's very fascinating. Because everyone forgets that there are a lot of agriculture communities, or even just like private property concerns, where there are rights of way and agreements that are pre-existing that Fish and Wildlife or U.S. Forest Lands or all the agencies sometimes forget. And so that was a very fascinating case study. Thank you for sharing that, Aurelia. I appreciate it. And I want you to briefly kind of examine or share your thoughts with your successors, because I think you like what's going on with Trump 2.0 and seeing a lot of your policies being carried out. So how would you say that Secretary Burgum and Director Nesvik are doing in the interior side of things, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm also one of the, probably also part of the school of thought that, you know, when the next person comes in, I always try to just respect, and I always keep kind of an arm's length away, and I just watch the news every once in a while. But I'm very excited of what's happening in Trump 2.0. I was just on a panel last weekend at Steamboat, and it was titled America 250, Age of Artificial Intelligence. And we really are at a new age. This is not something that's just going to be passing by.
Right.
Like, we are going to, everything's going to be transformed. And it's the same thing with Trump 2.0. Laid a great foundation in Trump 1. And it's no different when the Biden administration came in. They were at the end of Trump 1, they were already trying to like push some things in, and we're like, no, we're not going to do it. But you already had it prepackaged for us anyway when we came in Trump 1. So it wasn't hard to imagine that as soon as we left, that it was just easily going to be rolled out. And so, again, it's like you have the 4 years while Biden was there watching what was happening. And so you can start to go ahead and plan and say, okay, well, we did this. And one of the great accomplishments was the delisting of the wolves. The next administration comes in, you know, that position is not defended. But, you know, okay, this is where the judges made their decision. We have tons of case law on it, and then it's like, okay, well, what can we do differently so that it's steadfast? And so being able to move quickly based on what you've seen your history is. And the other thing that I think, which is absolutely fascinating, is that you look at who Trump has picked for his cabinet members. It's a different type of person, than when he chose for Trump 1. And so Trump 1, there are more, I would say, people that had more regulatory experience, more on the Hill. The folks that he chose, like Burgum, for example, these are people who have run companies successfully. They are people like him, they're business oriented, meaning that in order to succeed in business, you have to succeed in being able to work in your community. You have to be really good at selling whatever you have. You have to be excellent with managing people and getting things done in timelines. And that's exactly what you need if not only do you have to roll back what Biden did, so you have to account for that, but then that just puts you back to square one. Like you haven't even done anything yet. You're just back at zero. So then you're like, okay, then we have to move extremely fast because then we actually have to implement things that are changing to keep up and to get our title back as the world leader. So seeing the people that he has selected to lead those agencies is wonderful. I think that that's great. I think that has really changed the speed in which things are getting done. And then, you have people that want to be able to serve in the second administration because they saw the great things that happened in the first. They saw the horrific stuff that happened in the past administration. You're like, oh no, like we've got it. It's like you're signing up. And so that has made Trump 2.0 so dynamic and really excited and happy for what's being accomplished under Burgum's leadership, under Nesvec's leadership, really seeing what's happening and movement on the ESA. I think people are realizing, like, we have a limited window to get things done. So let's put some of your ideas, personalities aside, and let's go for the bigger picture. So I'd say, like, there's a lot that's happening, and it's building off of what the first wave, the first Trump did.
Permitting reform, I think what they did with NEPA was fascinating and so timely because everyone, no matter how you swing politically, has complained everything is so slow, we can't get new projects. And they're doing it in a respectable, sustainable way because they know, and they have sportsmen who are helming. Burgum, of course, goes hunting. Nesvec has done a lot in Wyoming, and lots of other sportsmen work in the admin, deputies, and others too. So they understand that balancing production with conservation, actual conservation, which is a theme here on the show that we've talked about for many, many years, that those are going to be balanced. And we see that also with the emphasis on America 250, expanding public lands access, national park passes, digitizing them, making the experience more family-friendly, cost-effective. No change for American price structure necessarily, but to make that perk reform where foreigners are paying more. It's not a crazy proposal. Like, other countries charge us more. Like, I've been to national parks abroad. They'll charge you a lot more if you're American or not a resident.
And it's no different like when you go hunting in another state.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think everyone focuses so much on the production side of things, but the streamlining of all the, regulatory morass that we had seen about permitting with projects, and now it's like 28 days where you get as early as you could get approval for a project, and then simultaneously that care and attention you will see to national parks and to other sensitive areas because everyone is very concerned about that backlog. And the Biden admin added another $9 billion. We have the Great American Outdoors Act. You were in office when that was signed into law. Such a consequential law. Nobody really talks about these days, but it's still brought back in discussion here. But that was, I think, one of the most consequential pieces of conservation-themed legislation any president had signed, especially in most recent memory. So I was very grateful to see that. And I think people forget that Trump's legacy will include that very, very seminal piece of legislation, and it should. And I think they're going to be expanding on it even more. I think in the years to come. So that's my understanding and reading into it. But let's see what else. Talk more about what you do in your day-to-day job now. So you left Trump. You went to Louisiana DEQ.
No,
you did. Oh, did I skip? You had IOTR. Some other.
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, you had several things.
So there's several things. And I'd say life really, so after Trump, I actually did a project down in Boca Chica, Texas. So I was down in SpaceX working on putting together a regulatory plan down there. And that was absolutely fascinating.
Did you meet Elon Musk?
I did. And the man is a genius. He just kind of looks right through you. So you're like, okay. Not on that level. And I mean, because you have all of the federal regulatory agencies that are just collide there. So you have EPA, you have Army Corps of Engineers, you Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yes.
You have National Park Service. Like, one of the last wars was fought down there, and they were still fighting after the Civil War ended because the message had not gotten down there. So you have a lot of historic sites there that you don't know unless you start developing. And then you have all the state agencies too. So anything that you could possibly think of, you're dealing with all the 3-letter agencies down there. So that was fun. And then took the role as CEO of International Order of T. Roosevelt. That was a new organization. I was there for about 6 months, and then life happened. And that's so my husband had passed away, and I was still the CEO and was trying to balance closing out his affairs and then dealing with the loss. And then this is a new startup, and it's only 6 months. And there's just no way that I could give a commitment to an organization having to work on his estate and then me just dealing with life. And it really just made me realize that I'm a human, and I can't do it all, and this is the time that I'm going to say that I can't. So I pulled out and just took a little bit of time. I still kept my role as the board member of Ramaco Resources. So I joined their board in January of 2022, still on the board now. So they're a metallurgical coal company.
In Wyoming, right?
They're headquartered in
Kentucky
in
or West Virginia?
Lexington.
Yeah, okay.
There's mines in West Virginia. In Virginia, we are going through a change right now. So we do have our site in Wyoming, which is a rare earth element
Yes,
mine.
where they found that huge deposit.
Yes. So we had Secretary Wright out there, the Wyoming delegation. So huge event. This is the second rare earth element mine in the U.S. The last one, the one prior, which is out of California,
Mountain View.
Mountain Pass.
Mountain Pass, yeah. Mountain View.
That opened 70 years ago.
Yes, the only operational rare earth mine, yeah, in the U.S.
And a lot of the other ones are kind of speculative. So you see me every once in a while writing about rare earths. So I've been on the board, during that entire time. But I needed time to just get stuff settled.
Get back on your feet. Take time for yourself. Absolutely.
Take time for myself. Unfortunately, still in probate, but still working through my husband's affairs with all of that. And so then I was asked, my husband and the governor knew each other for a long time, probably about 20 or so years.
Wow.
And I worked with him on a couple projects when I was at Interior, and then was always like, if you ever need me to come and help, let me know. And so it's like, yeah, Secretary of Environmental Quality. It's like, well, I was thinking, it might be like assistant here or something there, but I was like, of course. So was there for about close to 18 months, 17 months, and then got the offer for a partner at Earth and Water Law. And it was great in Louisiana because, that's oil and gas country, LNG country. And so going out to those communities where a lot of, again, you're dealing with scientists, a lot of regulations. So, you could be at your desk all day just looking at regulations. But unless you go out into the field and start looking at companies and seeing some of the fights, I really liked that the governor was supportive of DEQ wanting to enter a lawsuit against the National Regulatory Commission. And, when I came in, which was January 2024, so we had the last year of the Biden administration. And I had monthly meetings with EPA, and those were very interesting. So you're like, okay, the next month is coming up. Okay, great. January 2021 of 2025, I get a call from Scott Mason, who's the regional administrator. And I already had a list of all the things that needed to be addressed. And it was a night and day difference to know that the president came in on January 20th. I get a call the very next day and worked hand in glove with basically the oppression that we were having on some of the industries, some of them that were closing down. A lot that's going on with ethylene oxide and seeing that getting rolled back. A lot of the air emissions that companies having to put in place for millions of dollars that basically ends up being a roadblock for operations.
Yep.
So I was like, I actually get to work upstream of the conservation side, because then they're also looking for what projects can we do to offset, or a lot of projects for just community service that they're looking
absolutely.
to do for corporate social responsibility. So you got to do both, and it's also good outdoors community too. So a lot of fishing and hunting. So it was good.
And now you like coming back to DC for this newer role that you're in.
Yeah, so partner in Earth and Water Law. And it's basically taking everything that I've learned from the conservation side, from the agriculture side, from the industry, kind of energy, fossil fuel industry, and putting it all together. And how do you find business solutions for clients? Mm-hmm. Because you sat in those seats with the people that are making the decisions. You understand how they have responsibilities. They have a balancing act that they have to do. And so you're more able to provide those solutions because you sat in those seats. And you can, have those conversations where before, if you're just going in to an agency, it takes a little bit of time. So you can think through things, and you kind of know people as well too. Mm-hmm. So you're like, hey, advise me on how do we get X, Y, and Z, because you don't always want to say, hey, this is what we want you to do, but help me help you. And then the other thing that's also brought me back to DC is I'm a professor at Howard University.
Your alma mater you talked about earlier.
Yes. So I graduated a long time ago. And just feel honored that they would have me. And then the other thing too is I never thought that I would be a teacher. I have tried my best to stay away from teaching. My mom was a public school teacher for 30 years. So I say, God bless you. Like how people do that. That's why I went to industry. I don't have that patience. But it was something that my husband really wanted. And so I'm also doing it because of that. And I know that he would be very proud, because he was like, you need to go and do that. And we were working through like the process. And then again, just life happened. So you get to the stage and you're like, okay, we're gonna pick that back up. Even though that's not what I, on my own had planned to do, but it's turned out to be very fascinating, because out of my class, it's a small class, I asked for a small class, out of a class of like 14, only one is interested in being a lawyer. It's a upper level undergrad class. One is a chemistry major, one is a biology major.
Wow.
So I'm teaching the basics of how agencies were created, talking about the North American model.
Wonderful.
About public trust doctrine and how agencies got their authority, because it doesn't matter what you think or what looks fair. It's what goes before the court and how are they going to rule. And they're always going to go back to your foundational principles. And that will teach you how to think. So whatever the situation is, like you have your bases, you can go back to certain cases that are those pivotal cases, but let's first understand how we got where we're at today. So it's not like, oh, well, we need to go because, this is great because it's going to, we're going to have zero admissions. And it's like, okay, that might just be a statement that you made, but what's really going to be grounded if this goes to court? So, and then we also get to talk about hunting, and there's not a lot of the students that hunt. So I have my red alligator bag that I carry with me, and I told them, I was like, this is my bag. This is my alligator that I got.
How did they react?
I think they were a little confused.
Really?
They're like, you shot it? I was like, yes. And a few others too.
And you told them it is sustainable because it really is. You sourced it yourself.
Exactly. And, I talked about how alligators were endangered and talking about what hunters do to give back to conservation and how these agencies were created because of the amount of take that was happening. Like, there was no sustainability figured into this model at all. And the tax that we see, the excise tax that then goes back to the agencies, the state
PR
agencies.
Dingle Johnson,
that was voluntarily placed. And if it wasn't for that, unfortunately, environment, conservation, our wildlife is the last thing that's thought about. Like, oh, if you have some spare money, then okay, we might think about you guys. So grateful that it was built in this way, because there are other things that come like that are more pressing. And I saw that leading state agencies and, Fed agencies, like you have health, you have education, you have crime, and then you have animals. And you're like,
But it's so important in our industry and with our friends, and we know a lot of people travel in the same circles, but we talk to outsiders, and they're like, I never appreciated how much the Interior Department did, or I didn't understand how much it did. And they're like, it's actually the coolest government agency, and I don't like the government. So when you hear people say that to you, and I'm a limited government person, but I'm like, I want an agency that works, something that, has public buy-in, like DOI and all the agencies that fall under it. And you're absolutely right, because when people learn about PR and Dingle Johnson, they're like, no other country has this. It's amazing. And we have buy-in.
yes, absolutely. And I've hunted overseas too, and it's not something that's available to everyone. It's for the elite. It's for the few. And here it's something that, it packs the freezer for the winter. Like, that's what someone's going to live off. And like in Missouri, when they're stocking the ponds, like some people can't afford to go to the grocery store and get fish or food, so they can actually fish and get their meal. So it's important what our conservation and our fish and wildlife and game agencies do here in the States. And sometimes it's not recognized. So I remember during COVID, the silver lining of COVID was that I got to get out a lot more because there's no one in the office.
Right.
And so it's like, if our public lands are going to be open, that means our wildlife officers, they're still on call, they're still working, and now they're really the front face. You still have your visitors, but you don't have a lot of the administrative staff that's out there. So you need to go out there, see what's happening. We know that the numbers of visitors are going through the roof. And what do we need to be able to do to support them and keep the lands open? So there's this young family that was walking through. I was with the refuge manager, and they're like, oh, we are so happy that you left this park open. I was like, okay, I'll just let it pass. And then she said park for the second time. And I was like, okay, this is the educational moment. It's like, we're better than parks. I was like, because we're a refuge, and the refuge is open. Like, you can hunt, you can fish, you can walk. A park, you like go in and you see.
Yeah, like a zoo.
You look. Yeah, it's a zoo. Like, you don't get to engage and like get messy, or it's not as physical.
That's a good way of putting it. I agree.
So it's like we're better. We might, we're that secret jewel that I'm just trying to get more word out about who we are and what we do. But they play an incredible role. Very excited about Trump 2.0. Secretary Burgum doing an excellent job. Same as Director Nesvek, and it's nice to see what's happening there. the administration, the other thing I'll say about the administration, that they work collectively. So, like, you have the National Energy Dominance Council.
Which was not there before. It's a new thing in this term, which I like. I like that there's coordination between Zeldin, Wright, Burgum. Mm-hmm.
And so you see, like, there's overlap in the agencies, and for one to just be in a silo, knowing that it could potentially, impact someone else, or it could either elevate and just really magnify if someone does something, then they can really just build off of that. So seeing the collaborative effort that is happening between the agencies is really also, I would say, what's making this administration so successful and able to move so quickly on a lot of things because of that coordination.
And same with the Make America Beautiful, again, commission. That's also was introduced last year. I think Trump signed the executive order to allow that to balance the Dominance Council and to show that they also are attentive to wild spaces, places, animals, and the like. So they're not neglecting it. I always try to remind people that, yes, there's production, and we need the production because it's much better to do it here at home, cleaner, we know what's going on. And I think in the energy conversation, you talk to people about this too, and same with critical minerals. It's much better to produce here where the workforce is credible, workers are great, and you're not importing dirtier emissions and a questionable workforce, and you're paying much more for energy and other derivatives.
And plus, at least on the critical minerals and rare earths, like, you're sending it out for processing. You're getting something back that's finished. You don't know what you don't know what the process is, but you don't actually know what you're getting back. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's going to China for the processing.
Yeah.
So it's nice that we're working on the supply chain, seeing the money that's going out to figure out how do we have it all here in the U.S. because we have had it here before.
We did.
And it went elsewhere because of policies and regulations that we put in place. Mm-hmm. And now it's 30 years later, and we're trying to roll back and undo it. And it doesn't happen overnight, something that took 30 years to do. But they're moving at a great speed in which they're doing it at. So I commend that. But yeah, I
think I'm trying to get people to think in terms of, like, yes, you may not like production, it might scare you, but doing it here is going to be better for the environment than any other conceivable plan relying on other countries. And people are realizing with Iran, if they were net importers of energy, gotta look at your home, gotta produce at home or buy from America, because they outsourced their production under going green, under that premise. And now they're scrambling and they're paying these higher prices because they were more concerned about putting nature ahead of production when they could have balanced out those interests, like we do here and what we're doing now.
And sometimes I think that the nature and environment is used as a piece on a chessboard. Mm-hmm. Like, every once in a while when we want to get a bigger policy initiative of, like, go green, then the environment becomes something really important. But you didn't think about, like, the environment when we're having these horrific wildfires of, like, let's figure out management. Like, there's a way that we can do it versus waiting till you want some other bigger agenda plan. Right. And then you use environment as the underpinning for that argument. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not a wise decision because you can do things here, and that's why it was great in Louisiana, because you can have development and you can have a great outdoor community at the same time. And that's why you have regulations in place that are supposed to make sense.
Yes.
Because it's allowing you to do something that normally would be illegal for you to do. But we've done all the science around it to say, okay, these are the parameters in which you can do it, because it's then going to provide a balance for the ecosystem. And there's reasons why we have these guardrails. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like,
it has to be reasonable.
Has to be reasonable.
Yeah, because overregulation undercuts the environmental argument, as you know very well from your job, and I've tried to articulate that to people, young people especially, when I do lectures across the country, because now polling has showed that you can deregulate the environment a little bit, but still maintain air and water quality. It was Pew last year that started to show that. So the public is coming around to this idea that you don't have to sacrifice both to achieve both.
And that that's one of the things that I also try to tell people as well. And when I was in Louisiana, it was like we have to have, regulations that actually make sense. And just because you add a regulation doesn't mean that that's better for the environment. Like there's no correlation that means more regulations results in something that's a safer environment. It's just every regulation has a cost. Now that is something that can't be denied. And it's either a cost that the company is going to bear, it's a cost that the agency is going to bear, and if the agency is going to bear it, that means that the public bears it.
Yeah.
So that means that there's another person that's sitting there that's checking something that doesn't necessarily result in saying that there's a safer, healthier environment. It just means that you spent a lot of work at the legislature to get something passed, and then in the regulatory agency to figure out how we're going to do it, and then put bodies on the ground to go and do all of these additional checks that don't really result in anything but a whole bunch of extra busy work.
And I think, as before we started to talk and before we did our interview, NRDC, which are some of the worst obstructionists of anyone, is now endorsing nuclear energy. It's like Earth is crumbling, Earth's shattering to see that. So these legacy environmental groups, I don't know if it's genuine or sincere or what, but
that's what I question too.
Yeah, I'm just like, are they looking for some sort of carve out, or do they actually support this? And it's fascinating that some of the stubborn groups are now starting to come around. I don't know, again, authentically or not, but if we're getting through to them somehow, perhaps we are winning on this. And I know your time is precious. We're running a little longer, but I love the conversation. We love how it flows naturally at this. But if my listeners want to connect with you, Aurelia, LinkedIn?
Yes.
Earth and Water Law
Earth
as well?
and Water Law, yep. And so LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. Every Tuesday, I try to do something that's more of a substantive post. And then my Saturdays are something that's a little bit just more me.
You have wonderful posts. I love reading your posts. They're so substantive, and they make you appreciate life, and they're so, I don't know, amazing. It's a testament to who you are. So I think as people get to know you, and I've had the pleasure of meeting you several times now, it reflects totally who you are as a person, and I always get a sense of joy and happiness when I read your stuff. So I love your posts, and I encourage the listeners to also follow and connect with you if they find appropriate. This is so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm glad that we were finally able to do this and continue doing the great work that you're doing, and I love following you as well.
If you enjoyed this installment of District of Conservation, I would love to know your feedback. Send it my way. Please be sure to leave us reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played, and also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. Thanks so much for listening to District of Conservation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please share the podcast to those who may be interested in learning more about these critical natural resources, environment, energy issues.